This is Weather Scope.
Thanks for joining us tonight. A lot of you preparing for your weekend. Will you have to deal with Danny once again in the Northeast? Well, it's been redesignated as a tropical storm as it's moved off the coast once again. Are we going to be done with it, or are we going to have to deal with it again? Bob Stokes is in the Forecast Center with our hurricane specialist, John Hope.
Well, thanks a lot, Jim. Yes, if you're just joining us, the remnants of Hurricane Danny have become a tropical storm again. The questions are, where is Tropical Storm Danny headed? Will Danny become a hurricane again? We will explore those questions in just a moment with our hurricane specialist, John Hope. First, these are the coordinates: 36.8 north, 75.4 west. That centers Danny 45 miles to the east of Norfolk, Virginia, with winds of 50 miles per hour. So this is not a minimal tropical storm. Moving toward the northeast rapidly at 23 miles per hour, and the pressure is relatively low. As we check out some video out of Norfolk, this twister was captured as it crossed the Elizabeth River toward Harbor Park by a photographer that shot it out of a window of a skyrise. Boy, was he brave, or she. 5 businesses and additional buildings were damaged at this time. We have no reports of injuries, and I want to alert you to the fact this weather has passed. So that's some good news as Tropical Storm Danny moves out into the open waters. In the meantime, our hurricane specialist, John Hope, joins me, and it's moving out over water. Tropical Storm Danny is, and it has created some pretty strong wind gusts, John.
Well, they certainly had strong wind gusts on land around the Norfolk area and around Elizabeth City. A number of tornadoes reported besides the one that you showed the video of. But as you pointed out, that has all moved out to sea, and it's moving pretty rapidly. The center well offshore now and moving away from land at the present time at about 23 miles per hour.
Okay, now, there's some speculation this could become a hurricane. What are the possibilities?
Well, the possibility, it certainly does have a possibility. Right now, the official forecast doesn't call for it to become a hurricane, but when you read the discussions out of the National Hurricane Center, they point out that there is this possibility. And I just noticed from a automated data station that we have offshore east of Norfolk at Chesapeake Light that they had gusts there to 70 miles an hour, so it's up there pretty well.
Was that a buoy?
It's an automated station. No, it's not a buoy. It's right on it's on shore actually, but right on the shore.
I see. Now, there's been talk about Cape Cod, about the northeastern coast. What are the possibilities of a northerly jog? It's expected toward the northeast now.
Anytime that you have a storm out there moving northeast, you have to realize that any deviation to the left of the forecast track would bring it in closer. Right now, it's moving northeast. We expect it to continue to move northeast, but we always have to be alert as long as that storm is out there for any deviation to the left of the forecast path.
Okay, John, if we could we move through these satellite pictures? We'll begin with a look at this visible shot.
Well, here we are, and Bob, we can see out here right about there is where that circulation center is, and it's really racing off to the northeast. That's a pretty rapid rate, about 23 miles an hour, and it looks as if it might go even faster than that as time goes by.
And the waters are plenty warm. We're going to be showing that in a moment. In the meantime, coastal watch is in effect for the Delaware and New Jersey coast, particularly for high tides tonight. There's a look at the infrared shot, and the Doppler radar does show the center pretty well defined there.
It's getting pretty much to the edge of our picture here now, but it certainly is well defined, and as you can see here, moving pretty rapidly away. But these bands coming around this side still have some very heavy rain, heavy thunderstorms there, but as you can see, that's well offshore now.
As you mentioned, though, Norfolk and surrounding areas, the worst seems to have passed.
Well, it has very definitely passed.
And there's a look at the bigger picture. You wanted to make comment on the rain that's over New York City?
Well, we want to, you know, there's a stationary front front that has been stationary and may be edging a little bit to the north, and this precipitation, which has really caused a lot of trouble, very heavy rains, is not directly associated here with the tropical storm. You can see that these are two separate entities, and as this moves up along the coast, we're not sure yet whether it'll be some enhancement of this rain or not, but right now they're separate.
Okay. In the meantime, water temperatures are a big factor in the development and maintenance of tropical storms. And right here we have plenty of warm water. The reds indicate what? Water temperatures around 30 degrees Celsius?
Well, that's where we see the brightest red, and you can kind of see that in the Gulf Stream and some of these other areas. But notice now that this tropical storm is right on the edge of that. And as it moves north a little bit, it's going to run out. It's going to be getting over water. It's a little bit cooler. Right now, it's strong enough to sustain it and even let it increase a little bit.
Well, While tropical storm force winds are extending out some 145 miles from the center toward the east particular, any final comments on what your thinking is about Tropical Storm Danny at this point?
Well, we're just going to watch it very carefully. Right now it's moving towards the northeast, as we indicated, at a pretty fast rate of speed. It looks to us as if it will continue that path tonight, and that would keep it offshore.
I tell you what, it's not unprecedented, but highly unusual, I suppose, for a hurricane to enter land and spend some 5 days over the continental U.S. and then reemerge as a tropical storm. But in the meantime, we'll keep you posted on Tropical Storm Danny. In the meantime, let's go back to the studio for more weather information.
All right, thanks a lot, Bob and John, for that update. And again, folks, you heard John. If it keeps moving to this speed, we won't have to deal with it at all. We can finally stand on the coast and say, see you later, Danny. Unfortunately, some pretty active storms tonight across the Dakotas. Let's go ahead and add some insight into that if we could. We could 7 at Kansas City, 99 at Grand Island. So tremendous heat building just to the south of where we have that tornado watch. And once it decides to go, it's going to go in a big hurry. Look at the dew point at Des Moines, 77. Major juice there. 72 as we take you to Kansas City, and as we take you on down to the south, even Atlanta. Oh, folks, 78 degrees. That is not a comfortable dew point. Trust me on this one. All right, here we go. Friday morning, if this tropical storm continues to race on east, it'll take its compact little rain bands with it. As a matter of fact, it'll screw up the onshore flow here in the easterly wave. So that may actually allow the rains to taper off quite rapidly late tonight across the Jersey Shore, but the winds will probably still be a little bit of a factor, and hopefully this thing will just keep heading on out just in time to leave you with a gorgeous weekend across the northeast. And as you can see, the front off to the northwest, once again, will be the focus for more showers and thunderstorms, some of them severe. And tonight, many flood watches go out in areas that have already seen some heavy rain, especially across.
Something that our hurricane specialist says is very, very rare. And then now it's back over the open waters, and the National Hurricane Center says, yeah, it's a tropical storm. Now centered about 45 miles east of Norfolk, Virginia. If you're plotting along with us, don't write off Danny yet. We're still plotting. It's moving northeast at 23 miles per hour, and the central pressure about 1,000 millibars. Let's show you a satellite vantage point and put it into motion, and there you can see clearly the center of circulation in association with Tropical Storm Danny, and it is racing on off towards the north and the east at about 23 miles per hour, as I mentioned. So it is moving very, very quickly away from Virginia. Now, earlier today we had reports of funnel clouds and also some tornadoes in and around Virginia. Well, guess what? Now that's not a problem anymore as it moves away from land. Is it possible that this could intensify to hurricane status? Yes, that's possible. If it continues on its present track, though, hopefully it will, we're not going to see a problem along the southern New England coastline. It might clip Cape Cod, but we're going to have to wait and see, because any deviation to the north at all could change that forecast. And if you have marine interests or coastal interests from Cape Cod to Chesapeake Bay, you may want to tune in frequently and see what is happening with Danny. This one has been one for the books, as they say. We also have some showers and thunder showers across the southeast, but this is the big story as far as tropics go, across the east, across the Atlantic, actually. Gulf of Mexico looking pretty good, Caribbean looking pretty good. No other areas of concern except for Tropical Storm Danny.
This is WeatherScope.
Danny has now been redesignated a tropical storm. It's undergone quite a transition over the past 7 days. For the latest information, we turn to Bob Stokes in the Forecast Center.
Thanks a lot, Janetta. You're exactly right. Hurricane Danny made landfall 5 days ago, Saturday, along the central Gulf Coast. Then, in the ensuing 5 days, it's brought flooding, torrential rains, and tornadoes. And now it has moved out over water again, over the mid-Atlantic waters, which are plenty warm, and is strengthening. Will it become a hurricane again? We'll explore that question with our hurricane specialist, John Hope, in just a moment. In the meantime, Tropical Storm Danny, 36.8 north, 75.4 west. Those are the coordinates. That's 45 miles to the east of Norfolk, Virginia, with winds of 50 miles per hour, moving rapidly toward the northeast with the pressure at 1,000 millibars. And Danny, before it moved out over water, brought this twister to Norfolk, Virginia. This tornado was captured on video as it crossed the Elizabeth River toward Harbor Park. Now, this photographer shot it out of a window of a skyrise. Quite brave. 5 businesses and additional buildings were damaged. damaged. At this time, we have no reports of injuries, but this weather has cleared. It's not this bad at all in Norfolk now, so please be mindful of that. In the meantime, joining us is John Hope, our hurricane specialist here at the Weather Channel. And John, it is an unusual event for a hurricane to make landfall, traverse land for about 5 days, then reemerge as a tropical storm.
It rarely ever happens, and especially when a hurricane is a Category 1 hurricane when it made landfall.
Right.
And to stay together, and it's quite remarkable. And today especially, as this was approaching the coast, it hadn't been redesignated a storm yet. We could see throughout the day it was getting better and better organized, and by the time the center actually got to the coast, it was once again a tropical storm.
Well, what's the possibilities of it becoming a hurricane?
Well, the forecast doesn't call for it to become a hurricane right now, but there is a possibility, and the Hurricane Center is telling us that in their advisory. Now, we did see, as it got east of Norfolk, we have an automated weather station out there that reported a peak gust of 70 miles an hour, so it wouldn't have to get too much stronger. We do think it will get a little bit stronger, and so some possibility it could be a hurricane once again.
Okay, let's take the viewers through the satellite pictures. We'll begin with a look at this infrared off the mid-Atlantic coast. Could you tell us what you see here, John?
Well, we can see that it's still moving pretty rapidly, and the center of circulation right about here. It's not all that evident on the infrared satellite pictures, but what is evident is it continues this track toward the northeast at quite a rapid rate.
Yeah, and even on the Doppler, we can see that the center is really having moved out of the picture almost, but we see the western bands anyway. At least it gives us an indication of how far to the east and northeast it's moved. This gives us a little better indication here, John.
Yeah, this gives us a broader view, and even here the center is getting far enough away from the radar so it's not showing up quite as well as it did before. Also, we would point out that this area of echoes here where they've had some heavy rains, especially across some of the mid-Atlantic states in New Jersey, is just now beginning to merge with the precipitation around the tropical storm. Now, it's not clear that this is going to enhance the rainfall very much. In fact, there's some sinking air here. It's been pointed out to the northwest of the storm that's actually lessened the possibility of precipitation. So right now, it may not enhance this rain here, and we hope it won't.
Right. Well, we hope not. Nonetheless, there's some minor coastal flooding possible along the Delaware, New Jersey coast, especially around high tide. Keep that in mind. There's the center, and there's that stationary front that was bringing the rain to the north for much of the day. And John, the waters off of the mid-Atlantic coast, some 30 degrees Celsius?
Well, where we see the brighter reds here, we have 30 degrees. That's about 85, 86 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. And then up here where the storm is, it's right on the edge of this, so it's going to be kind of marginal. We first begin to see the reds at maybe a few degrees below what the threshold value is. We think that we need to have a temperature, Fahrenheit, sea surface temperatures of 79 or 80 for a tropical storm or hurricane to form and sustain itself.
And the temperatures now are about...
Well, they're a little above. They're 80 degrees where it is now, but
yes.
As it goes farther toward the northeast, it'll get a bit cooler.
Yes, that's right. Well, so we'll keep you posted on the strengthening of Tropical Storm Danny, and of course...
40 inches of rain. I know a lot of times we saw the official reports 25, maybe 30 plus inches of rain. When you have a hurricane, the rain does not fall straight down, and a lot of times it doesn't get caught in the rain gauge. It blows across it, so probably that Doppler estimate 40 was pretty good. Well, all the way up toward Atlanta, about 6 inches of rain on the north side of town. Charlotte over to Raleigh, that swath of 10 plus inches. And what we're looking at here, this is the North Carolina-Virginia border, the Tidewater, and we see some pinks here. And if we look at the scale here, you can see some of the numbers. Past couple of days, 10 plus inches of rain. Some areas only saw 1 or 2 inches, but overall a huge amount of rain. Eastern shore of Maryland got clobbered with a lot of rain too. I know up in Baltimore you wanted some, but it was all south. A lot of rain to the south, and generally what we're looking at, this legacy of rain finally going away as the tropical storm heads away too. Satellite picture, monument down there at Kitty Hawk. There's a water spout, and there's some cars damaged in the parking lot due to a water spout that came on over. At Duck, there was apparently a little girl that was, or a girl that was injured due to a water spout too. And you saw some of the footage over toward Chesapeake and Norfolk. Additional tornadoes, some water spouts. A real rough day today with the gusty winds. Lots of trees down too. Well, anyhow, finally, wait.
This is WeatherScope.
Well, just when you thought it was over and done with, it's back. Danny, that is. Danny is once again a tropical storm, and it's situated off the Virginia coast. That's our top story tonight on WeatherScope. I'm Dave Schwartz. Welcome aboard. Jeff Morrow joins us now from the Forecast Center with the latest on Danny.
Thanks, Dave. And indeed, it was last week we were talking about this tropical system south of Louisiana and Alabama and making landfall then. And now we're talking about it being regenerated as a tropical system, a tropical storm, as you mentioned, and moving off the Virginia Capes at the present time. Amazing. And as this system has moved along, it has had a history of flooding rains and some gusty winds and even some tornadoes like they had around the Norfolk area. These spectacular pictures are taken in Norfolk this afternoon from a high-rise building. This twister captured on video as it crossed the Elizabeth River moving toward Harbor Park. 7 area businesses were reportedly destroyed or damaged by this particular tornado, i.e. or water spout, as it was over the water. Damage estimates amounting to tens of thousands of dollars. In Raleigh, North Carolina, it was the heavy rain that caused the big problems. More than 4 inches of rain fell overnight. That's the official amount at the airport, but I'm sure there were some regions that got as much as 6 or even 7 inches. You can see the result of too much water in a very short period of time, some localized flooding. Heavy downpours ended about lunchtime, and it's dried out now in Raleigh. Joining me now, Meteorology Supervisor Stu Ostro. And Stu, we were sitting here last Thursday, a week ago, talking about this system off Louisiana, and we're still dealing with it tonight.
Amazing. Can you say deja vu? Same time, same place, same channel, same desk, same storm. The big difference, though, last week at this time, we had a storm moving about 5 or 6 miles per hour. This time it's moving at about 23. The steering currents are much more well-defined, and so hopefully it will finally get out of our hair before too much longer.
Yeah, it does look like it's finally moving. Let's go ahead and give the folks the particulars on this particular storm. And Stu, you're right. Northeast at 23 miles per hour. This thing all of a sudden has started to move.
That's right. We saw it come in to the coast here, made a little bit of a left turn. Since then, has maintained its identity and moved pretty steadily toward the east-northeast and has accelerated over the past 24 hours.
High sustained winds at 50 miles an hour here and the pressure at 1,000 millibars. You can see it pretty well defined here. Show us where the center of the circulation is.
Center of the circulation came off the coast just about in here this afternoon, has been moving quite quickly, and we think it's now at the end of this right about in there.
And it looks like on that movement, Stu, we may have this, if it keeps on this same northeasterly movement, do you think it would be much of a threat to southern New England?
Nothing too significant. We will see some wind and rain along the northeast coast, as we have been seeing during the day today. If it maintains the track that we expect it to maintain, the strongest winds would remain offshore. If it were to deviate just a little bit to the left or to the north of that track, the winds would be a little higher.
All right, here's a radar, and we're kind of losing the edge of our eye, the eye-like feature, I guess you'd have to call it the center of circulation, about right in there. But this rain up to the north, not directly associated with Danny.
That's right, and we actually had some heavy rainfall today in, say, parts of north-central New Jersey, perhaps loosely related to Danny, but not directly associated with Danny. The real Danny rains, if you will, are these green showing up off the coast, and the fact that they are fairly compact around Danny and some of these showers have diminished a little bit raises our hopes that there won't be any more excessive rains over New Jersey directly from Danny, but still a couple heavy showers in here.
Also, there might be some minor coastal flooding, from what I understand, along the Jersey shore here, as the flow around Danny perhaps combines with a little bit of a high to the north to cause a bit of a pressure gradient there.
That's right, Jeff. The same high pressure system around which some of these easterly winds have been bringing in moisture to cause these rains, also an old front sitting up here. That same high causing this onshore flow, but we don't anticipate anything beyond, say, a minor to moderate nor'easter, maybe a couple of feet above normal on the tides.
Okay, well, tentatively we have a live crew that is situated or going up to New England. So just in case, we have to be aware that this might, if it does make a little bit of a jog to the west or northwest, it could affect southern New England a bit more.
That's one thing you learn in this business is it's not over till it's over.
Particularly with Danny. I mean, Danny keeps making these comebacks. This storm has been a hard one to predict, and we'll try to keep on top of it, of course, here for you at the Weather Channel. Keep it tuned here.
Channel. No place on Earth has better weather.
This tropical update is sponsored by the Home Depot, where low prices are just the beginning.
It is time for the Tropical Update. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. Let's talk about Tropical Storm Danny again. Of course, same storm we talked about. Now, this is not uncommon, especially this time of the year, June and July. We often see storms that, in the past, that have formed over land, moved out over water, taken on tropical characteristics, and then come back on shore. Well, this one's done it twice, 2 times. There was this area of showers a couple of weekends back in parts of Louisiana, moved out over the Gulf water, became a tropical storm, tropical pressure tropical storm. Then eventually it became, of course, Hurricane Danny that did move in and affect the Gulf Coast. Now the remnants, we've been talking about this all week, the remnants of it kind of crept along and it really kind of maintained its center of circulation counterclockwise all the way across parts of Georgia and the Carolinas. And tonight, or rather today, it reemerged over water. And tonight we're still talking about it as it hit the water. Got Tropical Storm Danny again, current position 45 miles east of Norfolk, Virginia. Winds sustained at 50 miles per hour, moving northeast at 23 miles per hour. Pressure inside around 1,000 millibars. That's where it lies now. Again, off the coast. Looks like as it continues its northeastward track at a pretty good clip that it may not add the precipitation. Now, the heavy rains around New York City throughout the day has nothing to do with Tropical Storm Danny. That's due to a front. We'll talk more about that momentarily. But you have been seeing a lot of sustained rains. Baltimore and D.C. could have used some heavier rains, just didn't happen. The Norfolk area saw some rain from this, as well as parts of the mid-Atlantic, but Baltimore and D.C. really didn't see much benefit from this. You can still see the center of circulation as it continues to move on. Again, watch the counterclockwise spin of things as it moves on. Radar picture shows a pretty good vantage point on this as well. As it kind of moves out of radar range, there you see the counterclockwise spin. You can see those yellows and reds there. Some convection still inside, so it's still kind of firing up. You can see that moving out over the water. Again, that's its current position as it moves on. Now, this rain around New York City, Providence, and Boston, too, the wet weather throughout here, again, that's because of a front. This is not really associated. We'll kind of mix the things here together in the next hour or so as we kind of get some of that moisture kind of moving in with this. But still looks like now as it moves on, continues moving northeastward, it should be kind of kicked out and kind of maybe lose a bit of strength as it moves on into some cooler water. I guess that would be the good news. Maybe we can see Tropical Storm Danny really kind of get out of the way and move on further. In the meantime, though, it did dump a lot of heavy rain in parts of the mid-Atlantic today. And some rain, too, at times around Philadelphia. But Philadelphia could have seen some more rain, but actually some settling or descending air, some settled air coming out of Tropical Storm Danny kind of had an effect to kind of quell some of the rain activity here today, a little bit further to the north, so not as wet as it could have been. Let's look elsewhere now. North of Puerto Rico, a little upper-level low. Not much happening with that, though. Don't expect any real major changes in that. Kind of active along the intertropical convergence zone, but not much in the way of anything extremely promising right now. Anywhere near about 1,000 miles off to the east, the Lesser Antilles, a wave getting going, but not really much happening with it there. Again, around even Puerto Rico. Area of low pressure, but nothing really happening with that at the present.
Surprise. As of 5 o'clock Eastern Time, this emerged back over the Atlantic waters and was classified once again as a tropical storm. It's centered at 38.0 north and 72.1 west, in case you're plotting at home, 250 miles south-southwest of Nantucket Island. Sustained winds of 60 miles per hour, so that has increased since our last advisory, and it is moving to the east-northeast at 31 miles per hour. The speed has also increased considerably. Central pressure 998 millibars. A peek at the satellite picture, boy, you sure can make out the fast movement of that after raking across the Norfolk area in Virginia and producing tornadoes, damaging tornado there. We are seeing this thing moving offshore, obviously. It's been out over open water and appears to be gaining a little bit of strength, hence the winds have increased a little bit, but easily you can see how quickly that is moving. And will it be directly affecting New England? Not really, not at the rate it's going right now. It continues to move to the northeast, so you might find some higher surf across this region. You might find some gusty winds at times. That's a possibility too, and maybe some rain, but fortunately it looks like it's going to continue to work its way on out to sea, so we'll be keeping a very close eye on out for that. Rainfall amounts, these are some of the storm totals from Danny. Charlotte, North Carolina picking up nearly 13 inches of rain. Camden, South Carolina, almost 6 inches there. For the past several days we've been talking about the flooding problems in these regions, and now you can get a feel for why it has been so devastating. Raleigh seeing about 4 3/4 inches of rain, and Atlanta, Georgia picking up over 2, almost 2.5, but the northern suburbs, many areas picking up 6 and closer to on the order of 7 inches once all was said and done. So there was some significant moisture. Real quick peek, you can see here the Atlantic, the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Pacific. I'm going to be talking about all those regions. We'll zoom in closer and focus first around the Gulf of Mexico, where we have fairly favorable conditions here, but nothing really going on at the surface, thankfully. We can go on out around to Puerto Rico, and we continue to watch our upper level low producing some scattered showers and thunderstorms. As long as we have an upper level low, that's not really tropical in nature, so we're not too worried about any development in this particular area just yet. About 1,000 miles to the east of our Lesser Antilles, we do have a little wave. It's not very impressive on the satellite picture, but it's something that might bear some watching. Heading into the eastern Atlantic, again another little wave moving off the coast of Africa, and that too again is something that we'll have to kind of watch. The waters here, believe it or not, have been above normal throughout the month of July, so this has been an area that's been favorable for some time, but we just haven't seen anything getting going at the surface. A lot of convection here heading across Central America and on into Mexico. Nothing that looks like it's going to form into anything just yet. Nothing too organized. You can actually see how the upper level winds are shearing apart anything that moves on into this portion of the Pacific. So not looking at any real problem areas here. And in fact, if you're planning a trip to the Hawaiian Islands, looking pretty good across this particular region as well. We'll take another inspection way out here into the western Pacific, and you'll be able to see once again Rosie. That is a typhoon. Rosie still looking fairly impressive from a satellite pic, but again, not as impressive as it once was. Some drier air has been working on into this particular typhoon, and it is weakening. We think it will continue to weaken a bit more as it works its way up toward Japan. It's actually centered about 500 miles south of the coast of Honshu.